So these are the tools you'll be using. This is a sponge, the wooden knife, the wooden rib, metal rib, needle tool, and cutoff wire. First thing, you want to make sure that the wheel head is clear of clay dust. It can be damp, but you don't want it to be wet. Take your wedged ball of clay and place it firmly in the center of the wheel head. Always keep the clay wet. Step one is centering the clay. You want the wheel head to be going at a fast speed. Again, hands and clay wet. You're going to start centering with pressure at the base of the palm, legs, your elbows rested firmly on your knees. I'm going to compress down with the base of my palm. So if you flex your thumb, there becomes a sort of transition where the thumb and the hand kind of meet. Compress down to make sure that's firmly secure. And then I'm pushing in primarily with the base of my right hand so that my elbow is firmly secure on my leg. Pressing down and in. Also with the left hand, and I slowly cone the clay up. And this is basically two steps of centering. One is compressing down and in at the very base where the clay touches the wheel head. And that allows the clay to cone up. And then I compress down and in with my left hand, with my right hand still giving pressure down and in with that hand. So again, step one, center clay, fast wheel speed, up and in, and down and forward with my left hand. So the clay should not have a skirt of clay coming off the side. It's centered right from where it touches the wheel head to the top. And you know it's centered if your hand is on there with the wheel spinning, it's not undulating. And when it's spinning and it stops, it looks pretty much the same. Step two, medium wheel speed, digging the well. Take my thumb, my middle finger, those nails are together. My pointer finger locks them together on top. I want to imagine that the centered ball of clay is like a globe. And you can imagine an equator that goes across the globe. When the wheel's spinning and the pressure, my fingers go down and in to dig the well. I want to keep them just south of that equator line. So with the wheel spinning, even pressure. As I'm going down, if I feel the clay get sticky or tacky, I want to slowly release the pressure, get my hands in the clay wet, and I can continue to go down to my desired depth, which is about 1/4 of an inch to 1/8 of an inch. And I can tell that by using the needle tool as a depth gauge. Stop the wheel, needle tool in the center of the clay, slide my middle finger all the way down, pinch the needle tool, pull it out, and I can see the thickness of the bottom. So that's about where I want it. So step three, I want to dig or open step three, open the bottom. So I place my longest finger on my right or my left hand, it doesn't matter, in the center of the centered ball, in the center of the well. And then my other hand on top, elbows locked on my leg, and I pull directly back. I'm going to pull this hand away. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm opening the bottom, but notice the top is staying in the same dimension. Now I don't want the bottom to be beyond the dimension of the centered ball of clay. But what I'm doing is establishing the bottom dimension of the cylinder. So I want to imagine the bottom of the cup, open it to the desired dimension, And that completes step 3. Now step 4, I'm going to pack or compress the bottom. So with my 2 middle fingers, they start in the very center of the bottom of the cup, and I move slowly up to the 1 or 2 o'clock position. Imagine the clay is a clock, so this being noon, 1, 2, 3 o'clock. So I'm kind of moving up and back. So that compresses, flattens, evens out the bottom of the cylinder. Another little trick is when my right finger gets out to the edge, if I rotate my nail, which has a natural 90-degree angle, I'll make a very clean transition between the bottom floor of the cylinder to the vertical wall of the cup. So after step 4, step 5 is to make your vertical pull. But there's a little step you can do in between 4 and 5, and that's called the claw and karate chop pull. So I want to start by pushing in with my thumb, compressing down with the base of my hand as a sort of a karate chop move. And so my left hand, I'm not pinching hard, I'm really pushing in with my thumb with a good amount of force, and I'm changing the shape to make this look like a volcano, where the top is more narrow than the base. And this makes it much more easy to make the rest of your vertical pull. So step 5, proper, making a vertical pull. I'm using just the edge at the end of the tip of my middle finger on both sides. So the hands should be working in unison. They're mirroring each other. So as I raise my elbow for the first time on my left arm off my leg, my left hand goes all the way down into the transition to where the wall meets the floor of the cylinder. This right hand starts right on the wheel head, right on the plastic, and I'm pushing down in for several rotations. Notice the indentation, and then I'm going to push that mound up and into my inside finger, and then continue that pressure, slowly reducing the pressure to maintain the same thickness of the walls as I move up and in. Ease the pressure, very little pressure at the top till my fingers touch. And then after every pull, you want to compress and recenter the lip. So with my thumb and my pointer finger, I'm holding the lip, my right finger slightly compressing, and that helps to recenter, makes the lip a little bit thicker, holds the form together. So every pull you need to get the cup wet. So I'm going to get my sponge with water. If I just squeeze the edge, the water is going to go on the inside and the outside. It's going to hydrate the whole surface, keep my fingers from sticking. I'll clean up the wheel head, use the sponge, wheel still spinning. Remove any standing water in the inside of the cup. Now you never want cup water just standing inside the cup, because the clay will suck it up and it'll saturate it. You can cause cracking and clay faults in the firing and the drying. So okay, so step 5 was make a vertical pull. Step 6 is to repeat step 5 until the desired thickness is reached. So right now the top is a little bit thinner than the bottom, and many of you will have that challenge of how do you get this clay out of the bottom. So again, with my left hand on the inside, my right hand on the outside, my middle finger, which is my throwing finger, I'm going to just push out, directly out, several rotations till I start seeing this bulge here. And then my outside finger, I push in several rotations, and then I compress, again, that bulge up and in. Ease the pressure. And go very slowly vertical maintaining the same distance between my fingers. It's not the same pressure. I'm reducing or easing the pressure as I go vertical. And this helps to maintain the same thickness of the cylinder as you go up. Now notice how close those little rings are and how slow my hand moves up the side. You can imagine your fingertips being like needles on a record player. So they want to go slowly up, starting at the very bottom, and move all the way up to the top. To maintain a nice and even pull. Now at any point, if you feel like the clay is too dry or sticky, you want to just relax your hands, get your sponge, rehydrate your cup, clean up the wheel head, drain the water from the inside, and then you can continue your pull where you left off. So notice that the step 5 and 6 is a medium wheel speed. Pack the lip. So at this point, I have close to the thickness that I want, but if I have some wobbles or the shape is not quite vertical or quite square, then I can, number 7 is a shaping pull. So I might make another pull, and I'm not trying to thin the walls. I'm just trying to even everything out. I can push in with a steady finger on the outside to shape and straighten up my cylinder or my cup. Okay, now step 8. I'm going to use my metal rib. I want to make sure that it's relatively clean, especially the edge. Then I'm going to be touching to the cup. Now if I was to hold this with my fingers in the middle, all the slip on here, it's going to slide around. So the trick is to bend your fingers like this, set the rib against your bent fingers and your fingertips spread. And this allows, with your thumb kind of underneath it, and it allows very little pressure gripping the rib, but it causes a lot of control. And so I'm using the rib to both straighten the side of the cup, but I'm also scraping off the excess slip. So this becomes my outside throwing hand essentially. My inside hand still goes inside here. I'm holding it perpendicular to the clay, but a slight angle forward, cocking it about 10-15 degrees forward. And I can slowly move up the cup to remove all that slip. Now the bottom of it is rounded, so in order to get this all the way down to the wheel head, I can tip it forward and then straighten it up. I can recenter, taper the lip. Now what we're making is a cup. So you want to make sure that the lip, the top of your cylinder or your cup is tapered slightly and is nice and soft. So you can use your sponge at a fairly slow speed and you can kind of polish that lip so it looks inviting to use. Okay, so step 9, use the wooden knife to remove any excess clay down here and make an undercut. So first I'm going to use the rounded side of the knife, hold it at an angle, elbows locked on my knees, on the wheel head and then scoop it in. That'll kind of remove some of that clay away from the cup. Flip it over to the knife edge. It's a 45 or an angled along kind of flat surface here. So I can lay that flat on the wheel head, slide it in, scoop any of that excess clay away. And then you've got a nice clean foot for the final process of trimming. Okay, so then you stop the wheel, clean your hands. Take your cutoff wire, wrap it around your hands like you're flossing, thumbs on top, flush down on the wheel head, pull it taut, and slowly pull towards you and all the way through the pot. Now if you let it sag and you don't have it tight, the wire will bend, and that wire is likely to ride. It'll cut up and cut the bottom of your cylinder off. So we make sure that you're keeping it taut and flush to the wheel head. And then the final step is to remove the cup from your wheel head, and you want to get a clean board. Dry your hands as best as you can, remove all the slip. Doesn't have to be perfectly dry and clean, but this should be fairly tacky. Put your palms together, put them flush on the wheel head, slide them up to the cup, wrap your fingers around, and then just don't squeeze, just make their friction, and then you just rock the cup back into your hands, and the cup will lift off, keeping it round, and then you go ahead and place it on a board.